Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of the Flexwork Podcast. Today I have a local mover and shaker. His name is Mark Coscarello. How's it going?
It's going great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. As you can tell, we got the new studio up and running.
Yeah.
It's exciting to get some local business owners into the building, show them the space. We'll secretly try to sell you some studio time later after the podcast.
All right, that
because
works.
there's got to be like a little bait and switch at some point here.
Of course.
Right?
Yep.
So help me understand this. You sell solar to
Yeah.
residentials?
Right. So I am a broker and a dealer for a larger EPC, which is an engineering, procurement, and construction company.
Okay.
So they have about 1,500 people, and they've been doing the solar game for 12, 13 years.
So strictly New Jersey?
No, they allow construction in 35 states across the country, which is nice. So that's one of the reasons why we partnered
Are
with
there
them.
states like abortion that you can't have solar?
Say that again?
Are there states like abortions that just don't allow solar?
They
Like
are
why is it only
very
35 and not all 50?
You've heard about the solar hesitancy or the other?
No, tell us everything.
There's Illinois is a state where they want you in the home because they don't trust you.
Okay.
So a lot of solar is done virtually after COVID because people were selling, they were doing other aspects of solar, and they're like, how do I get into homes? And that's very instrumental of building rapport with people because these are not small, different little, hey, we need someone to come in and fix your toilet. That's not what this is.
So you're saying the act of selling the solar solutions had to be done virtually in Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It was very disruptive.
is this just one of those like license things that you have to be licensed to sell it in a certain state?
You do.
Okay.
Yeah. Like New York is a pain to sell solar in. So like the city,
I think they'd make it easy.
When
right?
does New York
There's
make
so
anything
much real
easy?
estate.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of real estate, but there's not a lot of platforms for it. It's suburbia is where so all of Long Island, we're good. In the city, not good.
So Hicksville, 100%, no problem.
Right.
Got it.
Yep. Exactly.
Hicksville is like Birmingham. It's just a lot of Indians over there. Yeah.
Is it?
I have so many uncles in Hicksville.
Really?
Hicksville is crazy.
I would never know that.
So help me understand this. As a broker for this EPC company, what is your ideal customer base?
Those people that are educated about solar and that are interested in getting away from the monopoly of utilities.
I see. So someone in the residential level that's doing research comes to you directly, not to the EPC, saying like, hey, look, I've been looking at solar. I don't understand the grants. I don't understand the tax benefits, but I'd like to kind of figure out who the best provider is going to be.
That would be a great start,
okay,
Ankur, if it was that way in particular.
You're saying people don't come to you like that? How do they come to you? Let's role
They're
play.
like, hey, what's this all about? Tell me about. So I see it on people's homes. I see it going everywhere. I hear about it. Is it free? And you're like, what in life is free? Tell me what's free.
Wait a second. You're saying the power of the sun is not free?
The power of the sun is free. To harness it is not free.
So explain this to us. So let's say we have 623 Morris Avenue.
Right.
We just redid our roof.
Yep.
How would I go about getting solar here?
If it's commercial,
He somehow just convinced me to become a customer. Did you see that? That just okay. All right,
I'm a natural salesman.
I don't know how this just happened. All right, so like we have plenty of real estate up there on the roof.
You do.
How does that work?
If it's commercial or residential and it's divvied up that way, this is in a residential area, but I would probably think this is variance as commercial.
I think so.
That might be something you need to look into.
This is zoned as a commercial lot.
Yeah. So it's probably a commercial building.
Yeah.
So we would look at going into a proposal, building something out. There's many different softwares. There's software as a service that you use to build out what that looks like as energy savings for the next 25 years for you. And that's typically what those look like. Their engagements.
How long it takes?
No, the money back. And that's a great. I love that you brought that up. To get your money back, that is all on the proposal as well. So that is typically anywhere from 4 to 5 years, depending on the loan or that you take or whatever that looks like. You could pay cash, or it is 8 to 9 years on average is what I typically see.
Really?
So you're investing into your own, property and everything else, your own grid to sell your energy back, and then you're making your money, you're breaking even. It's either 4 to 5, depending, or mostly I've seen 8 to 9 years.
So what do you think is the number one obstacle for people when they're getting solar?
Knowledge.
Just knowledge.
Their boundary of knowledge. There's been can I put it, I'm a pretty transparent and authentic person. So there's been a cesspool of people that have, solar's free.
The government, and
the government,
Instagrammers, YouTubers,
anything for the hook to market people, to get them, and that's where, like, I love your company because you talk about disruption, right, in the CPG space,
and we're full of personality here. So we're all about giving people like the information as straight as we possibly can in small, digestible bits of content.
Right, exactly. So it's the disruption of the solar game is what me and my business partner are looking to do, and just be authentic about what this is. Nothing is ever free.
Yeah.
It's, the air you breathe, they soon want to tax that.
Stop it.
So there's nothing that's going to be free.
No, man, Trump is in office. We're safe. The air is safe. He's not going to tax the air.
I've heard some pretty crazy things, but that's one of them.
I mean, the rest of it we don't know about, but the air is good for now.
They figured out a way to tax the sun, so they'll do that.
So in your week, right, I know you do this fractional CEO thing. You're doing the solar thing.
Yep.
Let's walk through what a regular day looks like for Mark Coscarello.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, I've been doing entrepreneur work for the past 8 years. I started an IT solutions company, building out tech stacks with CIOs and CTOs, doing that type of work. And then it quickly rolled into, what else can I do? So I've been in 5 different startups over the past 8 years.
5 startups?
Yeah.
Are they all still around?
There are only one that is still around, which is the solar one. I kind of moved away. I sunsetted the IT solutions business just in March of this year, kind of walked away from that. The regular day for me is I'm a very nonlinear thinker. So for the nonlinears out there that can understand what that looks like, is my brain works on many different swim lanes. And within those swim lanes, I get energy from doing things like this, talking to people like you, and talking about business strategies, about how to build businesses. The other aspect of
Julian, I could literally see his energy battery meter getting refilled by the second.
I saw it too.
It really does energize me. So I do a bunch of different coffee chats virtually and some in person like this, probably 3 to 4 a day. Just
Coffee
networking.
chats.
Yeah.
That's cool. How do you meet these people?
I'm a huge prescriber of LinkedIn.
Okay.
Facebook, I've been off of Facebook from a business perspective. I'm like, no, I've been resisting. No, I don't want to do it. And then I'd say about 6 months ago, I caved and I doubled my friends and following on Facebook just by going, it's a B2B platform now. That's
so
what it is.
You're just like sliding into the DMs being like, can I buy you a cup of coffee?
Yeah, I mean, not even that. People are approaching me. They see you're a CEO. They understand you're an entrepreneur. They're like, everyone now is an online digital marketer. Everybody.
Tell me about it.
So you know the space very well. And how do you separate from the good, the bad, the indifferent? That's actually
build a podcast studio.
Right. That's how
you separate yourself from the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I love it.
We got to get you custom Mark Coscarello. What do they call it? The brown things that go around coffee? The heat things?
Oh, yeah.
We got to get you custom ones of those.
Sure.
And then
the
you
cozies. Cozies?
It's not necessarily cozy. It's
a burn filter.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called. The guy who invented it is like a billionaire.
Of course.
He gets like a penny every time someone uses it.
Those
I went through
royalties.
4 this morning at Panera. Whatever it's called, but we got to get you custom ones of those printed. So when you're taking a sip of your coffee, or just custom mugs.
Yeah.
I didn't see that when I
are
looked
good.
at your podcast or the stuff that you post.
Yeah, I am not a coffee drinker. My wife is.
How do you have coffee, like rendezvous with people without coffee?
I bring the water.
Oh, no.
I bring the water or ask the water. One of the things that, and this isn't a plug or a knock on Dunkin' Donuts, I used to be addicted to their vanilla chai tea.
Addicted? How many a day?
It was probably like 2 a day to their, now they've discontinued it.
Was there an intervention? Did like your wife pull together some friends and family? Like, Mark, we got to tell you something.
I got her hooked on it.
You got her hooked on it? That's the worst. I got my wife hooked on Starbucks medicine balls. And oh my God, she's going to kill me because I'm saying this on the camera. But she goes through them all the time.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I used to do a lot of vanilla chai tea. And this is probably, I remember my friend Anthony introduced me to vanilla chai tea back 25 years ago.
And what's Anthony's background?
It's funny. Anthony is a cop.
He's a cop.
Just a friend of mine.
Okay.
He was a police officer for Morris County Sheriff's Office. Yeah.
We're going to have to talk about this later. I need an introduction to Anthony.
All right.
But so Anthony's like, come on, man, we're going to go get some vanilla chai lattes.
Yeah. This was before lattes was even a thing at Starbucks or Dunkin' or anything. It was vanilla chai tea. And I'm like, what is this new tea? You know, you've tried green tea, all these other teas. And I'm like, okay. And then I was hooked, you know. It must be the sweet tooth in me.
I mean, hey, Christopher Columbus was hooked enough to come all the way to what he thought was India.
Right.
So just to find those spices. So I get it. I'm not even going to be offended that you're calling it chai tea and not just chai, because it means the same thing. It's like tea and
TT, right.
But
it's like pizza pie.
So you're meeting 3 to 4 people a day.
Yep.
And you're just growing your network.
Building network.
And what is the goal? Is the goal that you're trying to spread awareness of this personal brand? Is the goal that you're trying to be a fractional CEO for more businesses?
Yeah, I think both of those.
Okay.
Fractional CEO for more businesses, strategic growth advisor. There's a lot of different startups and also companies that get seed A or B round of funding, and they don't know how to grow, and they don't know how to grow with consistency, and then also to build those sustainable revenue models. They're like, oh, cool, that's good. This is 3 to 6 months out. This is perfect. But sustainable revenue models is something that I love to build, and I've been doing that for the past 15 years of my career.
What is a sustainable revenue model?
That's a great question.
There's some people at home that have never heard this before.
Or I put it like this: how do I help or assist you to build the life that you deserve?
Oh, well, you start with a vanilla chai latte. Then you get to the office. Okay, so let's talk about our business. Let's do a live session here, right? Which I'm not paying for. But we run a podcast studio.
Yeah.
It's a local business. We are operational 4 to 7 days a week, depending on whether or not I'm traveling.
Yeah.
Because Julian can't be here 7 days a week. It's impossible.
No.
What would you give us advice on as a fractional CEO? Or what would be the process? Like, what due diligence would you do to start analyzing our business?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There are what I call gap analysis, a SWOT analysis, a risk analysis, and then there's also a SOAR analysis.
What's SOAR analysis?
I love that and I didn't set you up at that at all.
Yeah.
Almost everybody that I talk to goes, what is a SOAR analysis?
I did the rest of them for my business plan because my investor required them, but a SOAR analysis I've never heard of.
So it's your strategies, your opportunities, your aspirations, and then your results.
I see.
Right.
It's not SOAR like after the gym.
No,
it's
no.
like SOAR as in like Icarus,
right.
I flew too close to the sun.
Right.
Let's soar. Got it. So strategies, message people on LinkedIn to get them to come to the podcast studio for a free session.
Yeah. Outbound.
See us in person because we're kind of fun and awesome. And then see what happens from there. Right.
Yeah. Yep. I think the synergies, right? Who's your ICP? What's your audience look like? And then to tap into the aspiration, what do you want to do in 1, 3, and 5 years from now? Where do you want to be?
I think in a year, I'd love to get to 20 consistent shows that are getting published, which is our 10-episode seasons every quarter. I think that would be a great aspirational goal for us. And I think it's reachable within arm's reach. I think within 3 to 5 years, I'd love to have a second or third location because poor Springfield, New Jersey isn't going to allow us to expand at the rate that I would love.
Right.
But I do know that there's competitors popping up left and right. I don't know if you know this, but we're the only multi-room podcast studio in the country.
Wow. Interesting.
That's crazy, right? You'll go to some businesses and they create content, but it'll have like big production rooms and like it's a little tiny podcast room in the corner. We're the only multi-room podcast studio. All we do is podcasts.
That's awesome. And I would even hit on that, right? You're the only one to do that. And it's great that you have a plan in your head Ankur. I haven't heard other CEOs or business owners. This is interesting. I was talking to two people in September, and they own a online gaming company. And I mentioned to them the SOAR analysis is that this is where I can help you out and do some of this fractional work for you. And it's a husband and wife team. They've been doing online gaming, sweepstakes, all these for 30 years. And I was like, oh, that's great. So what are your aspirations? Where do you want to go next with this? You grew the company to about 400 people. It shrunk to about 80 during COVID and some of the other things. Now it's back up to about 185. What do you want to do next? And they both looked at each other and they had no idea. The one said, I really want to know how Lisa answers this question. And,
really?
And the other, I want to know how Tony answers this question. And I was like,
they must have been married for a long time.
I don't know, but I was like, how do you not know what your next aspirations are for your business? And I find that very common. So it's kudos to you for knowing what you want to do moving forward.
Is this more common in people that have been in business for a long time because they've kind of lost their way for like that ambition and that hustle because they've gotten comfortable? I imagine most new startups or people who are serial entrepreneurs like myself, we tend to not even start until we've had this SOAR mentally figured out in our head.
I think it's both aspects comes full circle. The people that have an idea, that know the right people, that start a startup and say, oh, great, we have an ICP, we have some customers. Awesome, we had a short-term goal. Oh, crap, where do we go from here? And then they're going, oh, and then I'm like, all right, that's the growth mentality of the people that I want to get in front of that say, where do I go from here? I need some assistance. Who is a fractional strategy growth advisor or a fractional CEO that I could tap into?
So let's walk everyone at home through that. What does it mean to be fractional in these roles?
Oh my gosh, you will see a lot of definitions about the term fractional.
What's your definition?
My definition is partnering with decision makers to get them to the next step in their business.
So I got to push back a little bit. That sounds a lot like a consultant.
So consultants are in and out, no real ties to the business. I think a fractional will come in and be embedded into the business.
I see.
They could manage people. They could do other things. They're a part of that business fractionally. They could be on retainer. It could be for a specific amount of time, but most of them it's long-term partnerships. That's what you want from a fractional. Consultants, you're in, you're out, you do a job, you cut ties, you're on to the next one.
Wow, I think I just learned something there. I kind of sell myself as a fractional chief marketing officer sometimes, but I always struggle when it comes to marketing that people approach me like, that sounds like a consultant. You're going to be here for 6 months and do this work and then be out. I guess I'm not a fractional CMO unless I'm fully embedded into the business and helping them manage their teams and so on and so forth. But then give me some advice here. I've had some clients recently that I grew their business so fast and so well that 3 months in, 6 months in, they're like, yeah, we don't need you anymore.
You work yourself out of a job.
I work myself out of a job in these settings. And granted, as soon as they cut me, things plummeted for them, but that's a different story.
That's a whole nother, we can talk about that too.
But how do I protect myself in that setting in this fractional world? Because I'm sure you run into this too, right? You give them aspirations and goals and accountability, and all of a sudden they're like, well, he's not here 7 days a week. Why do we need him?
Right. Great points. One of the frameworks that I use in business is TIA, and it's a framework that I created. Transparency, integrity, and authenticity. If we build upon that framework, we build trust. If we build trust, people will come back and say, Ankur did us right. He really built our business, and then we might engage with him for 3 months full time as a fractional to be 5 days a week, 7 days a week, and then it might go a little bit of a yo-yo. We only need Ankur 1 or 2 days a week, but you maintain that trust relationships based upon your transparency and your authenticity, saying, I'm going to work myself out of a job, and that's actually a good thing if I work myself out of a job. But where we're going to stay connected and where this is a long-term vision, these are your aspirations. I want to help you for the whole journey. It's not just for 3 months or even 6 months. It's the whole journey of your business. So hopefully you as a startup owner, or you are someone that has a great product, you've really captured your ICP, you're growing, we helped you do that. Now, how do we continue to do that? And that's where I come in with my frameworks. And actually what I mentioned to you before, how do you build sustainable revenue models? To your point, it plummeted after 3 months. That's not a sustainable revenue model.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when the magic sauce is Ankur Garg, it is what it is. But help me understand this. Why doesn't Mark Coscarello have a book? You have these revenue models and these accountability models and everything else that goes into this. These are things that need to be taught.
Yeah. A book that I've been approached by a lot of different people and saying, hey, can we help you publish? And my aspirations are not to write. I'm more like, I get energy. Me thinking about going down and just putting my words on paper and sucking it out is not energizing for me.
Why don't we get you a TED Talk?
Like something like that. Doing what we do. This is like more interactive education. I'm more of the podcast, or let's go on to Spotify and listen to Mark. Let's go on to podcasts and Apple and listen. So I've done a number of those. So that's where my secret sauce is kind of thrown into the world.
If we had like animations going on the podcast, there'd be a battery meter. I'm like, launch a book. It's like, right? And it's like, get you a TED Talk. It's like, ding, ding, ding. And everything goes right back to normal.
100%.
So, I mean, coming on a podcast right now and educating the world as to what you do, how do people find you on the internet? Is there a website? Is there just the LinkedIn platform?
LinkedIn platform is where I have a big following on the LinkedIn platform, and then on Facebook as well. So getting the word out there. I've been on LinkedIn probably since 2003, 2004. So 20 years growing.
Back when it was the ugliest website ever.
Yeah. It had so many different iterations of what it was. I grew up in recruiting. So it was just a recruiting tool, and that was it.
That's right. It was for HR people.
Yeah.
Like that was it. You put up your resume. And even then, when you put up your resume, you couldn't put any details back then. It would just be the companies you were associated with.
That's it.
So is that how you're found? People are just seeing that your content is going slightly viral locally, nationally, and then like, oh, let's connect with this guy because he's posting really educational content or podcast content where they're seeing your videos, so on and so forth.
And part of the things that I've done is noticing who my ICP is, my ideal customer profile, and then not going as broad. Somebody about 6-8 months ago, it was a CMO, he said, Mark, you're cutting yourself short. You need to get smaller, right? I still network wide, but the people that I surround myself with, we're on the same kind of trust mission, very much like some of the other leaders out there that I follow. And they're all about transparency, integrity, and being authentic. And those are some of the frameworks. I always start with my why, right? Simon Sinek, I'm a big fan of his. Start with your why and go from there. I love starting with my why, and my why is building companies. I love seeing other companies grow and flourish, but how do they do that? They have a great product. They need strategy. So
what's your favorite client to date? Your favorite growth story?
Gosh, my own favorite growth story that I've done was I was working for a company out of San Mateo called Booster Fuels, and they were disrupting the fuel industry and turning it upside down. Basically, we were delivering. And
you were allowed to be public about this? Your solar boys didn't get mad?
This was before solar.
Okay.
This was
so the solar mafia doesn't know about this. You're safe. Okay,
yeah,
continue.
I'm safe from that. Well, it actually piques the interest of why I got into solar, because of energy delivery and sustainability from a fuel delivery perspective. That company was birthed out of disrupting the gas station industry and bringing fuel to fleet vehicles and consumers, B2B and B2C, doing that in that area in the Bay Area of California. And
like
then
Uber for fuel?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Why don't we have that in Jersey?
Too many regulations.
Okay.
It's a nightmare.
We need to put that in the notepad.
I actually expanded that company from.
Actually, forget Uber for fuel.
Go ahead.
Electric car charging, but concierge service. They come to your parking lot, just charge your car, and then leave.
That was one of the aspirations that Booster had. And I was there from their C&D round of funding. And I actually launched a location and a market in Philly, Boston, Portland, Oregon, and then in Phoenix, Arizona. So
what happened? It sounds like such a great idea.
It was great. C and then D round of funding, 125 million in D round. And then startups are great until they're not. Money got expensive, and then different things lose traction. What we talked about off camera and out of the room before was North Star's true north, right? And I think once you grow, we were able to grow the company from 200 to over 400 in a year. And once you grow that quick, you talked about it earlier, that fast, you have to keep your people centric on your North Star and what that is. And that's very important in hyper growth companies.
Yeah. I mean, growing fast is tough. And the problems you see at 25 million versus 50 million versus 100 versus 200 versus 300, they're very different. And a mistake over at that 200 to 400 range, it may cost 20 million sometimes. And that changes everything.
It does. And that's why I'm a big believer of data, numbers, analytics, and that's part of my strategy as well. It's the people, it's the process, it's the technology that brings you those data, numbers, and analytics. And then it's also the operation. How do you reinvent that operation? To your point, Ankur, at each stage of the business, what do you look at?
I mean, depending on where you're at, you have to reassess your goals and your milestones and KPIs. And then I have my own workbooks and things that I have. I have this thing called Do It, where it's define the finish line in a quantified manner, outline the requirements, where it's tunnel vision, right? Like if you want to save $1 million a year and you guarantee that you save $3,500 a day, you'd have $1 million by the end of the year.
Right.
Create every variation that would have guaranteed results for the finish line. Outline all of that. Identify your aces, all the people that can create shortcuts to make those outline things happen, whether it's an investor, whether it's a marketing partner, whether it's access to a certain customer base or audience or so on and so forth, and then taking action where there's no plan B. I've had to walk people through their Do It multiple times throughout their company's history. And they don't understand that as the milestone moves, the outlines change. And when they're running off the same outline from the first milestone, like of course it's not going to be the same. Right now, when you get to the 50 million range, now you have to start looking at lobbyists, but you're not investing in lobbyists because it does actually affect your business. But at 100 and 150 million, if you're not investing in the right government changes, both local, state, federal, it changes everything in your business. And then when you get to the $1 billion range, it's a totally different world of how you protect and secure your assets. One thing that I've always found businesses, because our sweet spot is probably the 5 to 25 million range, where we come in, do marketing for them, get them to 50 to 100. Sometimes it's easier to buy another business than it is to grow your own. Mm-hmm. And people just are against doing it. Just merge. Yeah. Merge with the other company, right? You'll have a smaller piece of the pie, but you'll have the $100 million company at that point. Right. And then your buying power changes. Yeah. And people don't understand how that affects the bottom line for everyone.
Yeah. You just said a mouthful.
But it was just, just let me just vomit everything I possibly can about giving people guidance. Hey, you asked the question.
I did.
So I did. Fine, let me answer it.
And my nonlinear brain is spidering all over the different aspects and attributes that you said. One key point that I want to mention is waterfall versus agile method, right? There's a lot of variables that you just talked about when you grow from different levels of different monetary timelines and schedules. Being agile and connecting the right people to that growth mentality is tough, right? You have to really work those frameworks and make sure they're in alignment. My word for 2024 has been alignment, and getting people in alignment when those variables change. Because you look at the people and they're stuck in that one swim lane, and you're going, all right, now I know it's going to be a little painful, but I need you to get over here because we're not there anymore. This is our next. So over communication and building alignment and trust goes into play. If they trust you, they'll go, okay, a true leader, I'll follow that alignment and I see that vision. If you constantly go over your OKRs, your KPIs, diving into your mission, your vision, and your values, with purpose. That's the other thing, right? Part of your why, part of your purpose. Why are we doing this? When people start questioning, that's when they stop following. So over communication and constantly building that trust of, hey, we're in this together. It's a team effort. It's not just for me. This is for everybody. And that will elevate that trust level and bring in more alignment.
We got to get you a TED Talk, man.
I love it.
I feel like
absolutely
you're like the cousin of Simon Sinek. All these HR guys need to be listening to what Simon says, but I feel like all these CEOs need to be listening to what you say. I cannot tell you how many times I talk to a company and I'm like, hey, does your staff know you're in a growth mode? They probably don't, and they're all uncomfortable in this growth mode. I mean, like there's startup mode, which is very different because it's all the things at once.
Right.
Then there's stabilizing mode.
Yep.
Then there's a growth period. I've run into so many companies that are in stabilization and they don't tell anyone that they're switching to growth. And now their entire staff starts losing their minds. Like, hey, we stabilized. We switched to a 4-day work week. You know, I was able to have PTO and I was able to get all these other things. But then why do I lose all of it now? Because we're back in growth. It wasn't our choice. And then your staff isn't bought in. And then growth isn't forever. You have to go back to a stabilization mode at a certain point. But man, there's just not enough CEOs that have the right advisors, or not enough founders that have the right advisors around them. Because I remember for me, when we were reaching the first million, the first person I would reach out to would be a college professor, or there was that rich uncle that I could go talk to, or a couple of cousins that were successful in business. But 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, that circle got really small, who I could go to for advice. 10 million, there's no one. I was carving my own lane at this point. All I had were books that I could go to. And you don't know what book is the right book to read. And sometimes you waste time reading books when you need to be focusing on what you do in front of you, right? But are there any books that you would recommend that CEOs or founders go to? Because I'm sure you have a couple of go-tos.
Yeah. The Go-Giver is one. That is a really good parable about just giving without expectation and understanding what that looks like. A lot of people give to get all the time, and that framework doesn't work. It's not sustainable. So that's one book. Another book I can't remember off the top of my head, but Dr. David Schnarch is the writer of the book, and in the book he goes over 4 points of balance. And I think the way we react about understanding our own solid, flexible self and how we show up and what we bring to the table really speaks volumes about how we've worked on introspective growth. To your point, it's very alone when that circle gets small. You're like,
lonely.
What do I do? Yeah. Where do I go?
You turn to the bottle. That's what you do at that point.
Hopefully not turn to the bottle.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Then you spiral down, and that's even a lonelier place to get to. But yeah, turn to the bottle.
The only way for it to not be lonely is to read books like Soup, and you create culture around you where everyone's bought into the mission, so that when you're the one battling that uphill growth battle, you're not doing it alone.
Yep.
Everyone's with you in what you're doing, and man, this has been a great conversation, Mark. I mean, you do these all the time, right? The podcast,
I do.
Wherever you can get in.
Yep. Wherever I can get in. I love doing podcasts, getting my voice out there, my frameworks. Another book that just came to mind was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, another great book.
Another great book, right?
Yeah.
I probably read that 2 or 3 times when I first got it to just digest it, probably about 15 years ago. And I'm like, wow, what a mental shift.
Yeah.
Instead of working for a company, and then why can't I own these kind of companies? Why not? Like, there are limiting beliefs that people have. Like, let's do that together. And that's what I offer, is to go in and do that advising. I wish we would have met earlier. We would have had some, you wouldn't have been so lonely, Ankur. I would have loved to do this together.
If only. So how do people at home find you?
LinkedIn is the biggest place to find me.
Is there like a short link to it? Is there numbers after Mark Coscarello?
You can even Google my name. And my son's like, Dad, if I look you up, I see your LinkedIn's all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, so are my podcasts on there too. Let's get those out there.
So everyone at home, when you search Mark Coscarello on Google, you'll see LinkedIn's either the number 2 or number 3 link. You'll probably see some other guy that looks nothing like this man. Ignore that guy.
Yeah.
You might see some of his podcasts, and some podcasts link your information in the descriptions and some don't. We have to have a talk about that for these other guys. But the key thing is you'll see him with his solar company and you'll see him with the fractional CEO position all throughout the Google searches.
Yeah.
Thank God you don't have another Mark Coscarello out there to compete with.
No.
Me, on the other hand, there's a lot of Ankur Gargs I have to compete with. It's very frustrating and it is what it is. But I have to start using my middle initial to market myself.
Interesting.
And it's like Michael B. Jordan versus Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
That's totally different,
Yeah.
right? We named my son Anthony, and my uncle's name is Anthony. And he's like, I was the only one until you named your son Anthony. And I'm like, sorry, man. I count that as an honor, right?
Who goes by Tony? Who goes by Anthony?
Nobody. They're both Anthony.
Oh, okay.
So that's like, if someone says, what's your son's name? Is he Tony? And I'm like, I don't know who Tony is. I have no idea who Tony. It's Anthony.
That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate it.
I really appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.
If you guys want to learn more about Mark, just look him up and find him on LinkedIn and Facebook. He has the best pieces of content out there. And if you are a business in New Jersey and you're looking for some guidance for, what was the GSA? What was there's an acronym, Strategic Advisor, Growth Strategic Advisor.
Yes.
Mark's your guy.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.